Good day everyone, I am Cadet Hamisola Org Julkent and we are the Group 2. So for today's video, I'm going to discuss the meaning of global city. What is the meaning of global city? Global city, it is an urban center that enjoys significant competitive advantages and serves as a hub with a globalized economic system. The term has its origin in research on cities carried out during the 1980s, which examined the common characteristics of the world's most important cities. However, with increased attention being paid to process of globalization during subsequent years, these world cities came to be known as global cities. A global city, also called a power city, world city, alpha city, or world center, is a city which is a primary node in the global economic network. The concept comes from geography and urban studies, and the idea that globalization is created and furthered in strategic geographic locales. According to hierarchy of importance to the operation, the global system of finance and trade. The attributes of global city are infrastructure, human capital and innovation, capital investment, and good governance. Global city infrastructure includes transportation systems, communication networks, sewage, water, and electric systems. These systems tend to be capital intensive and high cost investments and are vital to a country's economic development and prosperity. Human capital and innovation in global city is commonly understood that one of the key ingredients of innovation in inputs include training and human capital, defined as the skills, knowledge, and experience of a workforce. Human capital strengthens the capacity of a firm to absorb and develop new knowledge, and as such, it is an essential part of both frontier and catch-up innovation. Good governance in global city means that it is participatory, consensus-oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective, and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and follows the rule of law. It assures that corruption is minimized, the views of minorities are taken into account, and that the voices of the most vulnerable in society are heard. In decision making, it is also responsive to the present and future needs of society. Cities serve as engines of globalization as they are social magnets that growing faster and generates large income. They are becoming the rulers of the countries. Although global cities are interconnected, embedded, as they are in global production and financial networks, they are also locked into competition with one another to command increasing resources and to attract capital. To successfully compete, local governments have been keen to promote their cities as global. Such cities have been marketed as entrepreneurial center sites of innovation in the knowledge economy. And as being rich with cultural capital, a common strategy has been to stress with multi-ethnic qualities of a city, for example. That's that will be all. And Cadet Korea will continue to explain my topic. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Cadet Korea, so I'm going to continue the topic which is meaning of global city. So, global city, the new global cities have since arisen not only financial centers but also producers of services that are in global scope. So, it is an urban center that enjoys significant competitive advantages and that serves as a hub within a globalized economic. And also, in this context, we can see a rescaling of what are the strategic territories that articulate a new system. And also, global city means that it is the cities that are high standard of living. Next, we have global cities are post-industrial. So when we say post-industrial, it is occurring in or existing in or being a period of social and economic development after the predominance of large-scale industry, post-industrial towns, and coast hubs like New York and San Francisco have stocked their features of post-industrial technologies, their finance and business services. So we have here manufacturing has been scattered across national and global network, and also turn the landscapes of production to landscapes of consumption. So it means that these cities are highly industrialized. Next, next we have the economic scale and concentration are necessary despite the proliferation of communications technology. So these cities have a good economic growth. And also, the global cities are brain hubs and centers of knowledge economy. So these global cities have universities in where it happens to transfer knowledge and research center of researches. And last, we have the global cities are the major nodes in the interconnected system of information and money, and the wealth that they capture is intimately related to the specialized business that facilitate those flows. So the international economic system was enclosed largely in this interstate system, and also the dynamic and processes that get territorialized at this diverse scale can in principle be regional, national, or global. So for example, we have the Hong Kong, the Singapore, the Shanghai, the Beijing, and the Macau. So these are the Asias that established and rising economic power centers. So um, that is the global city all about.
Hello everyone, I'm Decadet Vigilayos. So in this video, I'm going to tackle the characteristics of global city. So next slide. As I thoroughly researched about this topic, this is the relevant information that I've got from the internet. As you can see in the slide here, right beside me, in the slide of the characteristics of global city was defined and stated in the book of Saskia Sassen entitled Global Cities back in 2001. So this complex globalized production networks requires new form of financial and producer services to manage them. These services are often complex and require highly specialized skills. Thus, they are subject to agglomeration economics and tend to cluster in a limited number of cities because specialized talent and firms related to different specialties and can cluster in different cities. This means that there are actually a quite few of these specialized production nodes because they don't necessarily directly compete with each other. Having different groupings of specialties in this world, so a global city is significant production point of specialized financial and producer services that make the globalized economy run. Sassen covered especially New York, London, and Tokyo in her book, but there are many more global cities than this. So it includes the Paris also. The question then becomes how to identify these cities and perhaps to determine to what extent they function as global cities, specifically beyond all the other things that they do simply as cities. Naturally, this lends itself to our modern desire to develop league tables. A number of studies were undertaken, produce various rankings. However, when you look at them, you can see that definition of global city was used as far broader than Sassy's core version. Wikipedia lists some of these general characteristics people tend to refer when talking about global cities. Its cities are very lengthy lists, but some of them are. So the next slide. So actually there are 7 characteristics of global city, which is 1, home to major stock exchanges and indexes. 2, influential in international political affairs. 3. Home to renowned cultural institutions. 4. Service a major media hub. 5. Large mass transit networks. 6. Home to a large international airport. 7. Having a prominent skyline. So, I'm going to discuss to you guys the 1 to 4 of 7 characteristics of global city, while the next presenter, which is Cadet Mansalay, he will discuss the 5 to 7 characteristics of global city. So next. As you can see, this is quite hodgepodge of items, many of which are only tangentially related to globalization per se. In effect, many of them seek to define cities only in terms of global prominence rather than functionally as related to the global economy. That's certainly a valid way to look at it, but it raises the point that we should probably clarify what we are talking about when we talk about global cities. So for the number 1, home to major stock exchanges and indices, it means that all the money came from certain cities. So for example, you own a business, you pay taxes to the government. By that, there is already money circulated. And then you have a concern that the road in your area is bumpy. Therefore, the government create a Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, in order for them to have a function in a certain society. So the government allocates funds for them, which also came from the people who pay taxes. And now the DPWH has stock money for all the projects that should be done in that particular area. So for the next, it is influential in international political affairs. So within the city, there are a lot of politicians, since it is a source of stocks within terms of money. That is why it is highly influential with regards to political affairs. For example, Asian Summit. So in the Asian Summit, the politicians were gathered to have a meeting. There were many topics that might be tackled by them, including how to improve a certain countries by the help of other Asian Summit politician member. So for number 3, home to world-renowned cultural institution. So it is needed a home to world-renowned institution since it is the most influential city. So for example, like in Metro Manila, we have a Malacanang. It is an example for our influential cultural, because since it is that is the house of our first president. Our first president lived in that house. That is our influential cultural in the particular vicinity in which it is one of the series in Metro Manila. So for number 4, service a major media hub. So first, let's discuss what's the role of media in making a country a global city. So the mass media are seen today as playing a key role in enhancing globalization, facilitating culture exchange, and multiple flows of information and image between countries. Through international news broadcasts, television programming, new technologies, film, and music, so mass communication that reaches across the world today, that includes from traditional media such as TV, radios, and newspapers. And for the social media like YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, this all thanks to satellite and internet. Even the most regional news can be found and accessed through the entire world. For example, television companies like ABS-CBN, GMA, and TV5, they have considerably changed since the advent of digital technologies in the terms of its production, distribution, and consumption. It has become a global rather than a national industry, and has become increasingly commercial, with public service broadcasting forced to adopt its structure, rule, and function.
Good day, everyone. I am Deck Cadet Jarmor Mansalay, and I'm going to continue the discussion of Deck Cadet Lios about the characteristics of global city. So let's start. Global city has a large mass transit networks. A mass transit network is the movement of the people within the urban areas using a group travel. An example of a mass transit network is New York City subway or the subway trains in New York, where it averages about 5.6 million daily rides on weekdays. Mass transit network also includes buses, taxi, and other type of transportation. Next is Global City is home to a large international airport. An international airport is an airport with customs and border control facilities, and it enables the passengers to travel from one country to another country. An example of a global city that has a large international airport is Beijing. It is where Beijing Daxing International Airport, or the largest airport in the world, is located. Lastly, a global city has a prominent skyline. A prominent skyline is a standing out of or projecting beyond the outline of buildings against the background of the sky. An example of a global city that has a prominent skyline is Doha, Qatar. It is where the skyline of West Bay District is found. In Philippines, we also have a prominent skyline that can be found on Bonifacio Global City. And the next reporter will be Dick Cadet Bertria.
Hello everyone, I am Decadet Deverol T. Beretria. So today I'm going to discuss the assigned topic, which is examples of global city. Most of the cities with the largest economies are in one or more of the four global cities. London, New York, Paris, and Tokyo are the main example of global city because they are top or close to the top. They are also considered as the big four world cities because we can say that a city is a global city if it has wealth, powerful, and influential in other countries, and it is home to the world's greatest capital markets. They also have among the largest gross domestic product and high gross domestic product per capita. What makes New York, London, Tokyo, and Paris a global city? So first, we're going to talk about the New York City. So New York City is considered to be a global city because it has powerful organizations that are linked to the other parts and many major corporations and multinational companies that are headquartered in the city. For instance, New York City, it is the most populous city in the United States of America. It is also center of international business, command center of the world's economy, and also the main center for business such as legal services, world trade, insurance, banking, and more. Due to its increase in economic growth, New York City has become the largest city in the world in terms of economy. Next is London. The reason why London is a global city because the city of London is a metropolitan, and therefore it has a mixture of different cultures. London has grown to become a major financial center of the world. London is a metropolitan capital and which still remains a powerful center where the world gets sucked before being overtaken by the New York. In the 28th century, London had been leading other world cities in terms of size and wealth. So next is Tokyo. Tokyo has been Japan's most important city for more than 400 years. It rose to the global city status after World War II due to remarkable recovery from near and complete destruction by Allied firebombing. Japan's post-war economic miracle turned the country into one of the world's richest nations. This economic rise had a profound impact on culture as well as gross domestic product. Tokyo remains a vibrant metropolis of 13 million people, a cultural hub in East Asia for art, fashion, technology, and cuisine. This city residents had been comparatively very high levels of education and per capita income, and over 11% of the city population is employed in creative industry. So next is Paris. The reason why Paris is a global city because it has been one of the world's most visited places for centuries, and its economy prospers today thanks to a well-educated workforce, modern infrastructure, and global niches in creative industries, businesses, and tourism. So that's all. Thank you.
Good day, sir. I'm Decadet Arwin Lopez Palumpa. So I am assigned to discuss the example of global city. So this presentation is the continuation of the topic discussion of Mr. Decadet Gabriel Berretria. So he discussed this topic precisely. So I will just add some details and information about the said topic. So what makes New York, London, Tokyo, and Paris a global city? So what do they have in common? So first, a global city has a wealth, power, and influence to other countries, as well as host and large capital markets. So, global city is also home to a strong capital markets with gross domestic products in each capital. So, London, New York, Paris, and Rome, and Tokyo are one of the most well-known global cities as it provides global competitiveness for its citizens and companies. So, what makes these four top cities or world-class cities on top of other cities? So first, let's look on its dominant characteristics. So first is New York. So New York is active influence and participation of the international event and work affairs. So what are these international event or work affairs? So for example, New York City is home to the UN or the United Nations. So what is the United Nations? So United Nations is the intergovernmental organization aiming for the international security and peace. So on its headquarters, it is the complex and consequently contains a vast majority of the permanent mission to the UN. So in that, we can conclude that New York can attract more entrepreneur or business organization to create more business on their area or in the New York City. So let's move on to the London. So London has a major international airport. So example to the London Heathrow Airport. So that's secure as the establishment hub for several international airlines. So that is one of the contribution of in London that makes them in the top of the belongs to the global cities or in the top cities. So to some New York, London City, Paris, and Tokyo has been traditionally considered as big four world cities. Not coincidentally, they also serve as the symbol of the global city capitalism. So they also have a strong sporting community wherein a major sport facilities and teams in a major league sports and the ability of the historical experience to host the international sporting events such as Olympic Games, football, World Cup, and Grand Slam tennis event. So that makes them in the top world class cities. So in the certain countries, the rise of suburbia and ongoing migration of the manufacturing jobs to these countries has led to the significant urban decay. Therefore, to boost the urban regeneration, tourism, and revenue to the goal of building a world-class city has recently become the obsession with the government of some mid-cities and their constituents. So this world-class city is grouped into three different level of cities depending on their capability in reaching industrialized and being productive. So first is the Alpha World City, so the full service world city. So there it belongs to London, Tokyo, Paris. So and the second is the Beta World Cities, so major world cities. So it is also belongs to the San Francisco City, Sydney, Toronto, and Madrid. And the third is the Gamma World City, so it is the minor cities. So belongs to the Amsterdam, Boston, Dallas, Miami, and Manila. So the phenomenon of the world city building has been also observed in Buenos Aires, Santiago, Frankfurt, Montreal, Sydney, Mexico City, Toronto. In each this city has emerged a large and influential in the world. So that would be all. Thank you.
Hello, good day everyone. I am Janzo Ayan Bimola. So today I'm going to report about the challenges of global city during the pandemic of or COVID-19. So first we are going to disclose what is global city. A global city is also called a power city, a world city, or alpha city, or the world center. It is a city which a primary node of the global economic network. So next we have also COVID-19 pandemic. I think we are all familiar with COVID-19. So I think I'm just going to give some sort of information about COVID-19. So COVID-19 is caused by the infection with a severe acute respiratory syndrome, or coronavirus 2, or greatly known as SARS-CoV-2, or a virus strain. So let's move on to the effects of pandemic in the global city. So these are the effects: the food system, the education city and sustainable infrastructure, security and protracted conflict, refugees and forced displacement, environmental resilience, and global health. So food system, it is a food system greatly affected by the COVID-19 because it could almost double the number of 265 million by the end of 2020 in the poorest of the poor, of the almost vulnerable. That is according to research. The compounding impact of COVID-19 on the global food system, including the effects of the food production, planting and harvesting, transport, processing, and the safe distribution to and from the local markets. So food system greatly affected by the COVID-19 due to many restrictions. So next we have education, cities, and sustainable infrastructure. COVID-19 is also creating an education crisis, and most of the governments around the world has temporarily shut down the schools in an effort to enforce social distancing and slow viral infection. So we all know, as what we are doing right now, we are doing online class, and we are affected by global pandemic, that is the COVID-19. So education greatly affects us as student, also the education system of our country. We have also the cities and sustainable infrastructures. Due to many factors, there are a lot of restrictions, such as, for example, there are MSCQ, JCQ, and other restrictions that we need to follow, or that we are obliged to follow. Next, we have also security and protracted conflict. So COVID-19 amplifies governments to potential exercise of unlimited executive powers that might exacerbate, meaning that might worsen the conflict, that have devastating impact to the conflict-affected population. So the UN Security Council called for a global ceasefire. So meaning they are hasten, or they choose to not involve in war as of the moment, because they are concerned of the vulnerable populations, such as Philippines. Now, we are very vulnerable during war. the prevention of response for COVID-19. So that is in prevention or the response for COVID-19 has not been heeded yet. And there is an increasing exchange of artillery and shelling across some of the oldest conflict fault lines. So security and protracted conflict is being also affected by us, and that is why they declared global ceasefire. For us of the moment, they're not going to involve in any war or any conflict between country to country. So I think that would be all as part of my report. So thank you.
Good day, sir. I'm Cadet Sailoon Leslie Marie. I'm here to report the said topic in this presentation. In continuation of the previous reporter's topic, the challenges of global cities with the pandemic COVID-19. The COVID-19 crisis has impacted cities throughout the world. The disease's worst effects are closely linked with urban areas, whereas death rates tends to be higher because of complex combination of factors including population density, national and international connectivity, and public health response. Refugee crisis and forced displacement. Restrictions and mobility would have devastating effect on the world's 79.5 million displaced persons, many of whom live in crowded conditions with limited access to employment or services. COVID-19 might be the first major challenge to the Global Compact on Refugees and Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, both of which promise a whole-of-society approach. Now, internal displacement people are especially at risk, whether they were forced to flee their homes because of global coronavirus pandemic or COVID-19 remains to be seen. Lockdown measures and the economic crisis that has accompanied the spread of COVID-19 throughout the world is already affecting the financial resources and of the most vulnerable, and is likely to have long-term repercussions on local, national, and global economies. For example, those people who are more often dependent on insecure and informal employment. The spread of COVID-19 is expected to reduce livelihood opportunities and even further for months to come. Loss of remittances from relatives abroad and also unable to work is likely to further exacerbate vulnerabilities, as it represents a vital source of income from many individuals. For another example is most OFW were forced to come home here in the Philippines because of the pandemic, because some of their agencies or bosses were not be able to pay their salaries regularly because of the loss of income. Environmental resilience. Epidemic control is therefore also a key consideration in urban planning. Nearly 1 billion people live and work in informal, underserviced, and precautions urban conditions worldwide, while billions more rely on patchy and unreliable pipe water, electricity, and healthcare access in cities with deteriorating infrastructures. COVID-19 brings a short-term climate divided with benefits including clearer urban air. Now, good air quality not only has the merit of potentially reducing the vulnerability of individuals and communities to pandemics similarly to COVID-19, but also of generating wider benefits for public health, well-being, and resilience. Reduce air pollution, decreases damage to crops, forest ecology, and buildings. There is also a potential boost to efforts to tackle climate change, since air pollution and climate change are closely related. The main causes of greenhouse gas emissions, fuel combustions from electricity, industry, and transportations, are also major sources of air pollution. People now recognize the importance of green spaces to a city. For example, before, people would usually go to shopping malls to distress, relax, and chit-chat. But when COVID hit, more people started to get interested in natural areas, like going to climb mountains. Based on this change, city planners have started thinking how include more green spaces and urban forests. Now, let's go to the global health. Reorientation of health facilities to deal with COVID-19 in already overstretched and underfunded health system has reduced capacity to manage existing disease burdens, cessations of routine surgeries, health checks, and immunizations programs might produce outbreaks of preventable communicable disease, rising cancer rates, and increasing numbers of late-stage complex medical conditions. Pandemic-induced lockdowns leading to economic crisis or reorientation of health service to COVID-19 care producing subsequent rises in morbidity and mortality from other conditions can be understood as cascading risk associated with dynamic vulnerability. Now, as hundreds of thousands of people continue to die each day from this disease, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to impact almost every aspect of our daily life for global population. The COVID-19 pandemic has overwhelmed healthcare system around the world, having a knock-on effect on the diagnosis and treatment of the disease. However, individuals have avoided seeking help from other health problems due to lockdowns and avoidance of medical settings, leading to reduced diagnosis and treatments despite the problem still being there. Meanwhile, even diagnosed cases, treatment for disease and conditions such as cancer had to be postponed in many cases due to immediate threat of COVID-19 consuming health system and their resources. It is because researchers around the world tend to focus on COVID-19, potentially delaying research and breakthrough on the other disease. Now, in addition, anxiety and social isolation can be result from lockdown measure can further affect individual mental health. Research has shown that people are at high risk of anxiety, depression, and other forms of distress that can become exacerbated by psychological impact of quarantine and global health crisis. The impact of COVID-19 on cities around the world is unrevealing. This coronavirus pandemic combines health, economic, and social crisis, pushing millions of people back into poverty. The biggest opportunities for cities from this pandemic is to build back better, focusing on more climate resilience infrastructures and overextended health system in many parts of the world. That's